Good morning. We are getting ready to ride to breakfast, and then we're headed over to Barber Motorsports Museum over in Leeds, Alabama. I am so excited. So it rained really hard last night. There was a storm that came in, but it's clearing out and we are not expecting any other bad weather today, so we timed that perfectly to sleep during the weather. It was really fun waiting outside of the hotel. I got to talk to lots of people. I was out there to dry off the bike and just get ready for the ride today, and there were so many people who had been to the museum or heard about the museum, and so got lots of stories about their memories, and I'm just so excited. I was excited before, but after hearing so many people say that it's the best place they've been, I got some pretty high expectations over here. 3/4 of a mile we're going to be going on South 31. Saturday morning in Birmingham, Alabama. I am so glad that there is no traffic. It's awesome. Roads are wet, but I mean, I have on riding pants, so all the spray from the ground is just gonna wash off the bottom. All right, so we're gonna have to turn onto 28th Avenue Street. Oh no, 28th Avenue South. Alright. Alright. We're here at Maple Street Biscuit Company. This way to biscuits. Oh, it smells good. Alright, so we had a delicious breakfast. Oh, it's beautiful. See? Super grateful that while we were eating breakfast, the sun came out, the weather cleared, and we were able to enjoy an awesome ride after breakfast over to Leeds through Birmingham. There was no traffic. It was a nice, quiet Saturday morning and just a very peaceful ride to get there. Alright, so we are getting on to 20 East. Alright, we're almost there. It's only 3 miles. So the roads are wet here. Must have rained here after it rained. After it stopped raining in Birmingham. But it's just, beautiful, beautiful day. The weather's perfect now. We're a mile away. We'll start making our way over as a group. There it is, Barber's Motorsports. All right, I've been off at this exit before, and made it as far as the Buc-ee's, but I haven't made it to the museum. All right, so that's Buc-ee's. If you haven't been to one, it's an experience. We're gonna go there on our way back from the tour. All right, we all made it. Oh, and they have a hotel right there. Okay, Barber Motorsport Park. There's a museum, there's a racetrack. Home of the Barber Vintage Motorsport Museum. The entrance is over a mile. We're here! Yay! Yeah! Alright, so Motorsports Vintage Museum, Birmingham, Alabama. Look at the size of this place. Little too close. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I got too close. Yeah. Great parking spots, right?
I know.
Motorcycle parking only.
It's like they reserved them for us.
I know, I'm so happy. Here we are at Barber's Motorsports Museum. This is spectacular. You ready, Billy?
Oh yeah.
I'm so excited.
And punch B this time.
Sure?
Punch B this time. When you punch one, like
You sure can.
when you did that yesterday, that screwed me up tremendously because I'm not starting when my talk starts.
You want to start at the front?
I want to start at the restoration area.
Sometimes Alfred would say, I said, which end do you want out? He said, just surprise me. I said, oh, Shelby.
So,
That's not the Shelby.
okay.
I have a question. How are they organized?
A little rhyme to the reason, but not a lot. Fifth floor, which we'll go to next, is set up as what I call the sample floor. It's got a little bit of everything that we use. When people come in here and walk through those doors and say, my God, I didn't realize this was this big, I've got to catch a plane at 2 o'clock. We take them up to the 5th floor because that gives you an overview of the museum. You get a good feel of what the museum's about from that one floor. And it's got a little bit of everything. The rest of the floors are either by era or by product, by racing bikes. No, brand we do not do. There may be a few pods.
I saw there's a Triumph section. One of us rode in on a Triumph.
And that is by design. As you step back this way, this is the design area. We do about 95% of restoring here. We split up with cars on my left, your right. On this side, we usually have 4 or 5 cars under some form of restoration, and it might be something we're looking for, or it might be something we've got in the warehouse. We do have a list that, by obvious reason, we keep close to our chest of things we'd still like to add to the collection. His mechanics, when they weren't working on trucks to keep Mama's milk coming to him fresh, he'd have him working on his car collection that he'd collected over the years. Mr. Barber's a car guru. He's not a motorcycle guy, surprisingly. Started as a car collection in through that time here, and along about 1986, 87, his car collection wasn't growing the way he wanted it to. He was running into competition with Harrah's and Pedersen's and some of the big boys out west that had more money and been at it longer than he had. When one of his mechanics convinced him that he ought to look at motorcycles. Started out with, he went out and bought 3 Honda motorcycles in 1988, but found 3 brand new 1986 Hondas that were still sitting in the dealership and hadn't been sold for 2 years. 88 was kind of a was a buyer's market in '88 anyway, because motorcycles weren't that popular, they weren't selling well.
So the bikes that he has, do you have bikes that are not Mr. Barber's, but they're
No.
on loan?
Everything in the museum is
so
museum.
He owns it outright. No one donates and says, "I'll park it there for a few years just so you can display
He will
it."
not. He won't take it there. Museum might do a special exhibit for a weekend, but it's gone as soon as the weekend's out. Before the collection had gone to about 350 motorcycles. They're in an old warehouse downtown where it's a machine shop where his cars, where he's working on his trucks, and an accountant from there would come into it and say, "You got a problem. We got these motorcycles here. You're spending all this money on the motorcycles. We're getting no return on them. We got to do something about it. Let's figure out what we can do." So they put their heads together and decided to create the Barber Vintage Motorsports Museum, a 501c3 educational museum. You can't just call your private collection a museum, file the paperwork. To be a museum, you've got to be open to the public, at least one day a year. Mr. Barber did create part of his machine shop to a little display area downtown. And we were open to the public Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 10 until 2, if you could find us, and we closed for lunch.
And what year was that?
That was in 95 when we opened the doors to the public. In 1996, you guys may remember this, a little thing called the Olympics over in Atlanta. What you may not know is how much was done in Birmingham. A lot of people came to Birmingham to stay. A lot of the teams were over here to try. A lot of the preliminary events were here. And the city wanted to showcase Birmingham. Went to all the museums and said, "We're going to run a bus route for free for all our visitors that are in town for the Olympics. Would you like to be part of it?" Mr. Barber jumps up, and he jumps on it. And then they started finding out the details of it and said, "Well, you're all going to have to be open 7 days a week from 9 until 6 while these bus routes are running." So he started pulling in his friends to, that's when I came on board. I just never left. And one of the people that came in and discovered our collection was a gentleman named Ultan Guilfoyle, who is curator of artworks at the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. Ultan got this idea to curate an exhibit for the Guggenheim called The Art of the Motorcycle. That's the largest and most popular exhibit the Guggenheim has ever had, dating back to the 30s. Mr. B came back wanting to do a Guggenheim of motorcycles in Birmingham, Alabama. Guggenheim's is 5 stories. We're 5 stories. Think about that for a moment here. And it's open. You went up to the 5th floor and you worked your way down. If you guys weren't on a private tour, that's what we'd have told you to do. Go up to the 5th floor and work your way down through the museum. So he kept describing this 5-story open area where you could see stuff and go see what you wanted to see. And finally the architect threw a pencil down and said, "George, what you described is a parking deck." And so they went and looked at the Pizitz parking deck, among others, and this is the reincarnation of the Pizitz parking deck. Shut the old museum down for the 2 years this was under construction. And this opened up in September 2003 with about 500 motorcycles. But one of the things we'd started at the old museum was our autograph wall, where we brought people in. They signed the back wall if they're in the industry after they visited the museum. You didn't necessarily have to be in the motorsports because that's the football coach.
Oh, wow.
And there's another football coach, Gene Stolly, former. He was UAB coach among Watson Brown coach. I think he tried North Carolina, actually, through that time. But you can see some of the names up there that signed this. Jeff Smith, if you're into that. Willie G. Don M.D. Phil Hill, lots of Bill Davidson. George Barber. He's in through that time. And, we've got a lot of memorabilia around through here. Cug Nelson, Paul Smart, they've all been here.
Yeah, this is these are the caps that go on the milk, right?
Yeah.
Is that what these are? The seals for the?
That's the seals for the milk, for the old milk bottles.
How cool is that?
And old dairy products. He sold the dairy in '99.
Oh man.
So
That's
he's no longer in the Barber products, which we kind of hated because when you did a tour at the old museum, when you finished, you got a Barber ice cream. So. Around back. When we bring in a restoration, by the way, all our cars come in through those double doors right there. Cars, bikes, whatever we bring in, it literally comes through there. No matter where they end up stored, they come through there. They sit there roughly where those 2 motorcycles are sitting, and we evaluate to what we're going to do with them. When something comes in, you can, three things. You can preserve it, keep it in original condition, and fix what's broken on it. You can restore it, which has its own set of problems, or you can part it out. And we do our best not to part out something. Back there's a Surtees Honda body from when he was racing after he left Ferrari. An Outlaw, early IndyCar from the 70s. Bonneville Speed Racer.
How fast did that go? 211
miles an hour.
Wow, look at it. It's like you're down in a...
It's an old belly tank from there.
It's an old, yeah, it is.
Wow.
Wing tank, I think, rather than belly tank. Wing tank. We are in NASCAR land, so, like you guys are. We're in NASCAR land here.
Nice.
Too. Bobby Allison's road racing Buick
Man.
that he raced up at Watkins Glen shortly before he did his pirouette and then couldn't race any longer.
Yeah.
Next door to it is a brand new 1990 Corvette ZR1.
Herbie.
Volkswagen, got to have a Volkswagen if you've got Porsches in the collection.
You're going to have to schedule your own time to go down to the museum to see what's on the other side of this carpet. I wasn't allowed to videotape anything in that direction, as well as over on the restoration side. After our time on the restoration floor, we went up to the 5th floor and then worked our way down. The museum sells day passes as well as 3-day passes. I would highly recommend, if you have the ability, to come down here and really spend your time going through all of the floors. The collections were unbelievable. The private tour was definitely worth it. We were able to customize it for what we wanted.
This is, as I mentioned, this is our sample floor. This is the one floor that pretty much has no rhyme or reason to it at first glance, because this is the floor that if you don't have much time to see, you can come up here and see a lot of stuff you won't see anywhere else. We've got bikes going back to the 19-teens with an FN over there, up to BMW's Classic from the 74 something, what is that, 75, 76 for the R90S. Early Honda Scrambler. Early BMW over there. Now we do have a BMW pod here, which is one of the rare. What else have we got around here? The Suzuki water pumper, rotary. And we got police bikes back behind that pillar back there from the different eras. This is, Christine takes a KTM and modifies it so that the front end is driven too. So the front wheel is also driven. And there's, on the other side, I can show you better on the bike here. It's connecting off.
What year is this bike here?
2016.
Man, I mean, it looks like you, could you imagine?
Cargo back here?
Pardon?
This is cargo, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I
Or
think,
weight,
yeah.
You know?
For this cargo?
Yeah, is this a cargo,
Cargo.
thing or is this for weight?
Cargo.
What is this?
It's an Icon. It's the front end of it's a pivoting.
It's a Yamaha?
It's a Yamaha. Yep.
What's the deal with the two front tires?
It gives you a little bit better. This is Yamaha talking. Better traction. If you want to go down through the twisties a little bit faster, you've got more on the front end. That
And
does lean.
They lean with you.
It does
They're not
lean with
straight
you.
up
It's
right.
not straight up like a trike. It does lean so you can corner. You'll see these if you watch the Tour de France coverage on NBC Sports. You'll see a lot of these.
There's a really cool restoration story about this Honda pocket bike. There was a woman who volunteered in the museum at the ticket counter, and she really wanted to learn how to restore motorcycles. So the museum gave her the opportunity to learn. And this was the first motorcycle that she restored. And now that's what she does at the museum. Very cool.
But this gets a lot of credit for being the first gasoline-powered motorcycle, even though it was never designed as a motorcycle.
That one.
This one, yeah. Mm-hmm. This here, the Roper here, built by Sylvester Roper in the 1860s. Go back in American history, what else was happening in the 1860s?
Civil War.
And think of Civil War and motorcycles in the same sentence and try to make sense out of that.
Is that right?
And through that, but he had a few, and I think he had one. His first one was 1864, 63, 64 time frame, but steam powered. You had your coal fire here, burning here, your water tank here.
I'm not riding.
It's pressure. Your pressure tank is here, coming down through under your seat.
You're riding the pressure tank.
Yeah.
You did have some safety features here because when you rotated to put your brake on,
Right, that's crazy.
you also pulled release valve here.
And then, is this to secure the wheel, or is that a weight?
No, that's actually to put the wheel together. It's a wagon
Okay.
wheel. It's a wagon wheel.
Burr, what is this on the outside?
Steel. It's a steel rim.
Where was
But this, to me, is the first motorcycle. I mean, it predates that by 20 years. Our oldest motorcycle in the museum that's 100% complete and running is this 1902 Steffi. You can see how much it is from a bicycle that's just been modified. But motorcycles in the early days, before about 1915, were direct drive. They had no transmission, no clutches, because clutches didn't come out until about 1913, 1914, and weren't on motorcycles for several years later. So that meant, and this bike being 1902, there's no coaster brake in here. The cog on the back wheel is fixed to that, so as long as the bike is rolling down the hill, these pedals are going like this. So you're sitting there. So to get your feet off that, that's why you've got your highway pegs up here on your fork.
And then this?
That's a speedometer, or psychometer rather.
And then, is the light gas?
Yes, acetylene.
Settling?
Acetylene, yeah.
Wow.
See on the Shaw and the Marsh here, the Marsh tried to do it with the spring tensioner, where you could release the spring tension on the belt and maybe the bike can keep running. Shaw did it with a pulley where you could let go of the lever and loosen and slip the belt.
I love the little storage trunk. It pops open like a tin for cookies.
That's where you keep, that's where you keep your sandwich.
This area here is our oldest bike display. This has bikes where we've got them preserved. These are in running condition, but they obviously haven't been prettied up, haven't been repainted or anything. That's original paint. Tires have been changed out, but that's about the only thing on them. And they do run. Is a replica of the first Harley Davidson shed.
Oh.
Into the life size to the first Harley Davidson shed.
I know, right?
Back in this corner back here is a replica of a board track. Board track racing was very, very popular. Very dangerous in the early 1900s. But a board track was just what it sounds like. A track
on the
made out of
boards.
wood, 2x4 set up on edge. The bikes that you rode on these things here had no brakes, no oil pumps. They all had total loss lubrication systems, which meant that there's an oil tank on this thing and you had to pump oil. During the race, you had to reach down and pump a few shots of oil into the engine to keep them going.
So, and then any excess on the track?
Any excess
fast
around on the
did they
track,
go?
which did help preserve the track.
Yes.
And they can go over 100 miles an hour?
Yeah, 75 is probably closer, but yeah, to speed, but yeah, they could on that thing. And the tracks range from a quarter mile to 5 miles long in through the thing, which is a lot of wood. But there's only 26 motor dromes in the country. There's a lot more velodromes, which were built for bicycles. And I'm still not convinced that they didn't race motorcycles in some of the short track velodromes, because Birmingham had 2 velodromes, bicycle tracks. And when I went through the archives, because I'd always been heard that they were motorcycle tracks too. So I went through the archives of Birmingham newspapers trying to find some proof of that. And the closest I found was the race results, which had a Birmingham byline on it from the board track.
Over 100 miles an hour on these board tracks.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I think they were. Didn't they have leather helmets?
They were wearing leathers and leather helmets.
Yeah.
But still, if you're on a high bank track like that and you lost your traction, you usually came down with some splinters because your bike's gouging into the wood. Splinters are coming up.
Is this?
That's the angle for a short track.
that's-
For a short track, you watch the race on a short track from above, and that's another way they made dangerous, because the bikes would go off the top into the crowds and kill spectators.
You know, the first Charlotte track, NASCAR, was a wooden track.
Was it really?
Yeah, a bunch of 2x6s built on end, and it was
Yeah,
a
like
wooden
this.
bank like this.
Was it in Myers Park or near Myers
No,
Park, or was
the
it?
first one was in Pineville.
Wow. I want a sidecar. Like, in my heart, I need a sidecar. I
You need to
one.
ride on one first.
I did. I got to ride them. I got to
Okay.
ride in the sidecar at the Wheels Through Time Museum.
Okay.
They rode me around, and I caught some air. Yeah, and I've got a couple of friends who have them with Urals.
Schwinn quit building motorcycles in 1931 and 32 with a full order book. Schwinn just felt like their history was their future was in bicycles rather than motorcycles, and they shut it down. As we all know, the Great Depression started right about then, And the Great Depression wiped out every American motorcycle company except Harley Davidson and Indian. And that's why you don't see Redding or Ace or Henderson.
Tucker, not Tucker.
Crocker actually did make it to 1939, but they went out. They made it through the end of the Depression. Here's a 1920 Harley Davidson Boxer Twin. Fore and aft on that thing here. This bike was never really popular in the United States, but it's very popular in New Zealand and Australia. And when this one was restored, we did a lot of internet back and forth to figure out what where. You know, we'd send a picture down, we'd get a picture back, we'd send an email down, we'd get an email back. And when we finished it, we really felt like we were just the hands, and the guy that restored it was the guy from Australia came up here to see us, so we showed him his work. So a little hill climb display here.
Yeah. Oh.
With Indian, Harley, and this Excelsior. It's put on for extra traction for going up a hill.
Okay.
For hill climb competition. White tires predate black tires because they didn't until they started adding carbon black after World War II, after World War I.
The rubber comes out white, right? It's
Rubber
like a
comes
white
out
gum.
white. Sears never built, still like today, they never built anything. They just put their own name on it. Built the Sears category. But you could order this through the Sears catalog. It'd come in a crate with a big instruction manual, and they showed you how to put it together, or you could hire somebody to do it.
1920 Milter with a covered sidecar.
You know, this was a case down here. You know, I mentioned that Mr. Barber took up the motorcycles because if something was wrong, somebody could tell us on that thing. Well, when this thing came in as a restoration, these were down here. And this cable came down and low. This cable was rotated 180 degrees. And I was sitting here looking at it one day and I said, that's wrong. Because if that's down there, anytime you hit a bump, that's going to come up and it's going to hit right here.
Yeah.
Said that had to be on top. So they did the research and said, sure enough, Jack, you're right. Model T Ford pickup in green. And you say, that's not the right color.
Couldn't get it green.
Yes, you could. So your daddy lied to you. And through that thing. Beginning in 1909, Ford started offering other colors on their cars. You could buy a car. They did 2 shades of green, actually. Model Ts were gravity feed, no oil pump. The gas tank is up high, right behind the engine, where the gas come up. And that is why early Model Ts or early cars backed up hills, steep hills, because they couldn't, if they went up forward, the gas, they couldn't make it unless there's a very short hill.
It's like running out of gas on your bike and you're going up a hill and it runs out of gas on you, but if you go downhill,
It'll keep going. So if you ever want to just do something, if you find the old highways through town, through a mountain town, and try and pick out where they turned around. In Birmingham, it's real easy. The old highway that came over the mountain out of Birmingham is by Vulcan, statue of Vulcan. And the turnaround point was down around Cobb Lane, down below the hill. My guess is that the top turnaround point is where there's a parking lot now. That's right at the base of the mountain. Okay, this little exhibit here in the middle is the adventure bike. People actually did stuff long distance riding on that time here. The 2 BMWs you see on the island here were ridden around the world in the late 80s by Jim Rogers and his girlfriend Tabitha Estabrook.
Nice.
But going on a self-contained trip around the world, you need to have some mechanical ability. So he sent Tabitha to BMW school, and she became a trained, licensed BMW mechanic.
We had an incredible visit. We spent the entire day walking around the museum and hearing stories from Jack. His knowledge of the motorcycles in the museum is, I doubt, surpassed by anyone, even Mr. Barber. I really hope you enjoyed riding with us to Birmingham and coming to visit the Barber's Motorsports Museum. I highly encourage anyone who's interested in motorcycles or cars to put this on your list of destinations. We had a great time, and a special thank you to Jack for giving us an awesome tour of the museum. We had so much fun with you, and thank you, Phil, for putting this trip together. And if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, leave a comment. My name's Jordan. I believe in gear shifting gratitude. I started this channel to share my motorcycling adventures in the hope it inspires you too.